today's artist is Pablo Bronstein. And if you look, we have shared this image of a piece that the Holborn Museum acquired fairly recently from Pablo Bronstein. And I'm just going to give you a little bit about his background, really, just so you have a sense of this artist. And then Sam will talk about how this has inspired this piece, particularly this piece has inspired today's activity. Pablo Bronstein is actually an Argentinian artist, but he works in London, and his work spans from drawing to choreography and performance, which I didn't know about, always with a focus on architecture. And his illustrations of buildings resemble, much older architectural plans, usually of sort of the 18th century France and Britain. And they reference the Baroque, which Sam's going to talk to you more about. So he's kind of playing here and in many of his works with creating something that you might, when you look at it, especially when you come to the Holborn and you're surrounded by Georgian pieces and decorative features, you might walk past this and think, oh, it's a print, it's an 18th century print. And I think people do. And when you come back to the museum, I want you to find out where this piece is, because it really does blend into the kind of Georgianness of the other things, but it's not Georgian, not at all. So this piece was made in 2017. So Pablo Bronstein says about himself, I'm an immigrant. I was born in Argentina, and he lived in a modern flat in Buenos Aires. And then he found himself in a very old house in London, but his grandmother's house in Buenos Aires was also very spectacular and classical and grandiose. And the house that he moved to in London was very small, and he says horrible. And he's reflecting and thinking maybe that kind of sense of loss, a sense of wanting to escape from the very small flat he was living in London, sort of started him thinking about how to make things grander, how to take something simple and sort of really make it splendid and wonderful. And if you want to sort of have a little look about him, I think it's quite interesting that his most ambitious project was called Historical Dances in an Antique Setting, and it was on at the Tate Britain in 2016, and it took inspiration from the neoclassical surroundings of those galleries at the Tate, and he kind of created this live performance of dancers who were moving through the galleries and dancing every day and interacting with the architecture. So he's a really interesting artist. And he says, one thing I like about architecture is its attempt at aspiration, it's desperation. I'm not excited by good quality, decent, sophisticated buildings. I think, Sam, you put this quote down. I like buildings that want to be seen as better than they are. Don't we all want that? So that's just a little background, but do have a look at Bronstein. I think he's represented by the Saatchi Gallery. If you go on the Saatchi Gallery's website, there's lots of his images of his pen and ink drawings. They look like drafts for real things that are going to be built and made, but they're not. So do have a look, because it's very inspirational. I'm going to now stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to introduce Sam. We're delighted to have him with us, and he's going to talk about the activity that he's designed for you today.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, I'm Sam. I'm an illustrator. I'll show you really quickly what I do, just because I figure it's interesting sometimes. So I'm just going to share my screen now. Okay, can you see that okay? This is me. Basically, I draw animals pointing at stuff for a living, largely in a kind of explaining history stuff. So I'm really interested in things like that. So this is a kind of sneak peek of something that's not been published yet, but it's a trail for Durham Castle. I do a lot of stuff for Durham Castle and Durham Cathedral and all those people. Anyway, I'll leave that alone now. And yeah, we'll get back onto the Bronstein. Your mission for today is for you to find a building or a man-made thing and Bronstein it. Now, basically, that's like we've said, you can find something that is really grand already, like say the Holborn, and make it grander. You can take something just like your house or a man-made object in your house and make it grander. The other thing that I really think about Bronstein is he has a touch of the absurd about him. Like if you look at that first image there, it's a cake stand. It's a giant cake stand in the middle of a bridge in the middle of this kind of Georgian or Parisian scene. He's kind of playing with you. He takes things out of context and makes it into something different. The other ones I can show you, I'm just going to zoom in a bit. I mean, look at it. It's got this kind of Baroque style to it as well, which is all about swirls and gold and making things look glitzy and blingy, basically. So I kind of want you to find something and do that to it. The other thing that you might want to consider is the element of fakery. He is making stuff look like it's old when it's not. These are really good examples. This one here is the erecting of Paternoster Square column, which is a bit of fakery in itself. It was built in London, I think in the 90s, to look like an old monument, but it's not. And so he's kind of made it look even more of an old monument by, I mean, this is in a really busy area of London in real life. There'd have been cranes and all sorts of stuff, but he's put it in this kind of barren field. So it's like London before it was even there, and it's been hauled into place like it's Stonehenge. So he's made it like some like really big kind of, almost like a biblical scene, you know, like kind of, he's taken something out of context, out of its normal kind of home and made it something really kind of grand. So that's your job, is to take something, either something that is grand already, make it grander, get the gold pen out, put swirls on it, add shells to it, and you can see the Holborn there. That's a pretty grand building already. But you could say that it's quite tasteful. Make it really untasteful, cover it in stuff. We have inspiration for you. There's loads of it if you are, you know, on the internet and you can look around the Holborn's collection. There's loads of Baroque stuff and you can see, I'll just zoom in on it. Look at, I mean, all this kind of ostentation, all these kind of silver and angels and fruit hanging off stuff. I really like that. And there's the cake angle as well. You don't have to consider all of these angles. Basically, I'm just trying to give you a springboard to kind of do what you want with it, which I was a little worried about, that it's maybe a bit too woolly, but hopefully it's a good start. So, I mean, the original piece we were looking at was a cake stand. And if you Google Baroque cakes online, you get all kinds of great stuff. All, you know, all this kind of ostentation, gold hanging off. And also, I mean, it made me think of things like Viennetta, with all the kind of, all the swirls on it, and Gillian chocolates, things like that, kind of classy, but not too classy things. Okay. And we were looking at things that are in the same ballpark that might give you some ideas. It really made me think of James and the Giant Peach, which is, a peach is like a, you know, a fairly day-to-day thing that you'd see potentially anywhere. But in the story of James and the Giant Peach, it gets made into this amazing thing. And it's taken something simple out of context and made it magnificent. Another person that does that is Terry Gilliam. Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with the Monty Python animations, where he uses kind of collage and takes things like that and takes these historical images and makes them kind of daft and absurd. The other thing that it made me think of a little bit was a film that came out called Mortal Engines, which was where they had cities on wheels. And it's just another kind of example of taking something real, putting it in a different setting and making it something amazing. I think that I need to put my money where my mouth is a little bit, because I was, yes, you could do all these great things and it's fantastic. And then I kind of thought, well, what would I do? Had a little worry about it last night. And what I did was I took some photos. I went for my little daily walk and I took some photos, and I took some photos around my house. And I just kind of tell you how, if it was me, which it will be, I think I'm going to do this as well, because I got quite excited by it. What would I do? And it maybe just give you some ideas. I mean, yeah, you can do it. I mean, the other thing to say is you can do this any way you want. You can do it using drawing, you can do it using collage, you can do it in interpretive dance if you want. But let's see, I'll show you what I kind of came up with. Things that I would make amazing. This is my pride and joy. This is my shed. I built my shed out of the wreckage of the old one, and it was the thing last year that I was proudest of, I'll tell you now. But obviously, if I could get some, golden angels hanging off that, and some gold swirls, and a bit of silver sort of tracery around the top, or just get some frills on it, at least have a tidy up, that would be a start. Then there is the pub down the road. I chose this one because it's standing on its own, so it's quite easy to kind of take it out and put it in a different setting. If you remember the pictures, like the erecting of Paternoster Square Column, where he put it in this deserted wasteland and made it something else, I thought that was a decent example. The other one we've got, this is a little clue as to where I live, is the Clifton Suspension Bridge. I chose it because it is pretty grand, but it's quite simple as well. And looking into it, if you look for designs for Clifton Suspension Bridge, and you'll see all the kind of crazy ideas that people had before this was come up with, including, incidentally, Isambard Kingdom Brunel, who designed it. He wanted golden sphinxes on the top of those towers. There's all kinds of things. So that is an example of something grand that you could make grander. And I'm sure that if you are able to get out and about, or just sort of Google it, Bath has got enough grand buildings that you could make grander. Then I looked at things which are kind of day to day, but monolithic. You could take these out of their setting and make them kind of amazing, put them into another scene, play about with scale. I mean, these are kind of quite small things, but you could make them massive. Is this all making sense? Is it sounding okay? Cool. I mean, yeah, and also they're all quite simple things, but you can kind of see each of them. Well, this one maybe not, but these two, they've already attempted to make them a little bit grand. They've already got that kind of Georgian feeling to them, with the panels and the crown and the ER and the nice writing. You can make them, look really, well, amazing-ish. Okay. The next one I've got is just things from around my house that, again, I thought could be taken out of context, maybe want to feel a little bit grander than they are. I've got this rusty chicken, which I always see out of my window, and I always think looks quite grand, even though it's kind of rusty, and it could be, it could do with a makeover. So I like that. This one here is a bath bomb that's been kicking around our bathroom for ages, and really reminds me of that cake stand that's in that Bronstein piece, the one that, the one that we're talking about today, because it's like it's a functional thing, but it's been made, it's trying to be more than it is, with all these kind of things, kind of, if I don't know, you have all kind of weird things floating in your bath, we put that in there, it's kind of, but it's made it's a functional thing that's been made to look grander than it is. What can I do to beef that up, or maybe put that in a town square? And then there's this one, a little Winnie the Pooh jar, and it reminds me of a hot air balloon. We get the hot air balloons going over Bristol a lot. And so I was thinking, well, okay, what could I do with that? And this is the one that I kind of had a little go at. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen now, so you can see how nervous I am. Okay, yeah, so I mean, could we launch it into space? So I thought, you know, I've built there, I've put it in a big kind of plane, the same as the Paternoster Square thing. But then I'm thinking, okay, well, it's, you know, it's Georgian. So maybe it makes me kind of think of little stories, you know, like you're putting something into a weird kind of space, but why, and what is the story? And it kind of leads me, at least, onto other things. Like, okay, well, how do they get in? Well, you take the top off the jar, you get all your little Georgian guys in the middle there. And that makes me think, well, what do Georgians wear? So I was looking that up. And what would a Georgian astronaut look like? So, you know, you have big golden angels on his shoulders. And it's, I mean, all I'm trying to say here is that you can take it where you want. The other thing is, well, is that I've done a drawing, but it doesn't have to be a drawing. You can do stuff with photos, you can do stuff with whatever. I mean, I got a little tea box, and that's my house. And so I've got that. And then I've got like a giant rabbit, which is just, you know, it's not a giant rabbit, but I put it next to it. And I could do anything with that. If I took a photo of it, I could do little people around it. I could give it some flying buttresses. I could, yeah, float it down the river. I could, do you know what I mean? I could do anything. And I just think that that Pablo Bronstein piece is a really nice way to go. It's a nice springboard to do something surreal, daft, and also for me, it's made me kind of go down little routes where I've kind of researched stuff. I guess the final thing that I would maybe do is that kind of that fakery element, that thing where Bronstein has taken a new thing and he's really made it look old. It's like Louise was saying, that when you walk past it in the gallery, and when I first saw it as a thing to do an activity on, I just went, oh, it's just an architectural drawing. So yeah, I would have walked past it. It's only because I was told, and I really looked at it, that I know that I'm being played with, basically. So get the tea bag out. Just, you know, if you want to kind of, you know, get a bit of paper, do the old tea bag thing on it, make it look old. Maybe, I mean, for me, I think that what I would probably do is push myself out of my comfort zone. I don't like drawing buildings. I don't like drawing straight lines. I kind of made a promise to myself I'd never draw a straight line again ages ago. But these are, you know, there's that kind of thing of architectural drawing. So maybe I would get the ruler out and start really, you know, treating it like an old design, or not. It's like I said, if you want to do it as a dance, you know, knock yourselves out. That's it.